Hello, everybody. This is Brian Friedman. We are live. Is The View from the Top, and we have got a fabulous, fabulous show for you today. I'm so excited. I'm super excited. Our special guests today are Yuki Watanabe from The Gap and Andrew Walker from EY. So we've got a real bi-coastal episode. So we've got Yuki in San Francisco and Andrew in New York. We're going to be exploring the differences, East meets West, fashion meets finance, large program meets medium-sized program. We're going to be looking at all those differences. It's going to be an amazing show. I think you all know how it works. Please join the conversation, write in the comments box. We want to know who's out there. Please, just give us a shout. Tell us where you are, what you're doing. And most importantly, as we go through the show, also, please engage, hit that like button if there's something you like, the applause if you think it's great, the heart button, and also ask questions. Andrew and Yuki have agreed to answer any questions that you've got. So please use your time on air over the next hour to ask questions, and similarly with Julia and Pat when they do their immigration and tax updates. So as I said, we've got this fabulous show today. We're going bi-coastal. We've got Yuki Watanabe and we've got Andrew Walker. The other thing, of course, is you can get your credits from us. You can get your GMS or your CRP credits. And thank you to ERC and indeed Lynn Shotwell and, of course, Andrew Walker, who's with us, and everybody at ERC for helping us. And also to everybody at Rocket Mortgage, who's been helping us get the HRCI and the SHRM credits. And we'll be dishing out those credits towards the end of the show. So you have to stay tuned. It's our little incentive to stay tuned to the end of the show. And then you get the credits. So what have we got coming up? Well, we've got some pretty exciting stuff coming up over the next 2 weeks. Next week, as I think people know, we rotate The View from the Top with Benevo Bites. And next week on Benevo Bites, we've got a live case study. Yep, you heard it right. A live case study on Benevo for Buyer, and we're going to be talking specifically about mobility for early careers. So I think that's a really, really exciting area to talk about. What else have we got? Well, the week after, The View from the Top is back, and I'm delighted to say that our guest in 2 weeks' time, on the 7th of April, is Emanuela Boccagni from ECA. So it's really great to have Emma on the show on the 7th of April. What else is new in this wonderful world of global mobility? Well, of course, there's the top 100 service providers, isn't there? I think you all know about that. And it's now time to make those nominations. We've already had, incredibly, 2,000 nominations. We've had 2,000 nominations for the top 100 service provider professionals. We are closing for entries on the 31st of March. So you have got 7 days. That's all. You've got 7 days to make your nominations. So please get onto the website, and it's up there. It's just go onto benevo.com and find the find the tab. Go in and nominate your top 10 people, and we're going to be pulling together the top 100 list pretty shortly. So there's some exciting news coming up. I've got other exciting news, actually. I'm also delighted to announce that Benevo is having a major push into the USA. We are, in fact, opening an office in Palo Alto very shortly. And my colleague, Matt Chick, who's actually from the area but has been in Europe, is relocating out to the USA. He will be joined by two industry legends. I'm delighted to say Wes Okamura, who's a nearby neighbor in Palo Alto and in ex-EY, and Eric Halverson, ex-eBay, are both members of our strategy council, and they're going to be helping us there. We also have Meredith Morris, who's joined us in Houston, and of course, Michelle Durkin on the East Coast. So expect to see a lot more of us in the USA over the next few weeks. So all very, very exciting stuff going on. And then before I bring the guests on, I just want to do a couple of shout outs. The first shout out I'd like to make is for my good friend Patricia Tavares, formerly of Unilever, who's been a guest on this show. And she's launched a couple of webinars one called Brazil Talks and one called LATAM Talks. And hopefully, if you're out there, Patricia, do just put something in the comments box so people know exactly how they can access them. But these are great webinars, and they are live starting next Thursday. I'm also delighted to say that one of the sponsors of The View from the Top, HSBC, is opening its Expat Explorer survey, and that opens on Monday, the 29th. So it's actually the largest survey of expats in the world. It's been going 14 years. And this year, the overarching theme is going to be confidence and global mobility. And what better theme given the year that we've had. So if you've not taken part in it, then please do. If you're an expat yourself, then please do go on to the HSBC Expat Explorer survey. Or if not, do feel free to share it with your assignees so that they can go in. This is not a survey of mobility professionals, it's a survey of the expats itself. Lastly, in my introduction, I just want to mention some sad news. And the sad news I just want to mention is that two leading lights in our industry sadly passed away this week. I'm very sad to say that Jennifer Manis from Houston, again a legend in industry, worked in mobility for such well-known companies as Halliburton and BHP Billiton, died after a long industry. And also Paul Evans, who is something of a legend, especially in the moving industry. Paul was the founder of companies like Team Relocation, Interdene that merged into Santa Fe, and indeed, until his death, was the owner of Abels, Gerson, Momentous, and GMS Relocation. So a true titan of our industry there. And our thoughts go out, of course, to their family and their colleagues. So that's a somber note. What I'd like to do now, though, is we now need to move on and talk about immigration. And once again, I'm delighted to say that we do have Julia Onslow-Cole with us to talk with us about some of the hottest topics in immigration at the moment. So without further ado, let me bring Julia on stage. Julia, hi, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Brian. Thank you.
And you're still in the Maldives, I gather?
I am, yes.
Okay. There's nobody out there watching who is in the slightest way jealous, okay? I don't want
you wouldn't be actually it's the middle of a big storm at the moment, so
No, I'm sorry, I know I should be showing you sympathy, but it's not coming. I'm sure that storm will clear up and you'll be having a very sunny day shortly.
Thank you.
So anyway, Julia, what are you going to talk to us about today? I know it's not the Maldives. Where are you taking us today?
Yes, so I wanted to just say a few words about some announcements that were made on Sunday that were really important for the UAE. But first, carrying on the sort of somber note from taking up from what you've said, I also unfortunately want to give my condolences. And we heard the very sad news this morning that His Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Rashid suddenly passed away. He's the deputy ruler of Dubai, and he will be remembered for many achievements. And so the UAE is obviously in mourning. So I wanted to say a couple of things of this announcement that was made by his brother, the ruler of Dubai, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, on Sunday. And these covered the remote working visa and visitor visas. And it was a very important announcement because the remote working scheme has been incredibly successful in Dubai. They've really had a huge take up of people very, very interested to work remotely. And I think, as part of that success, they're now extending it to all of the Emirates, which is really fantastic for people who are looking for places to remotely work. And I think that this is going to be one of the key things for the future of work, remote working. And so, the requirements are that you have to have at least $5,000 income a month, and you have to be self-employed or employed outside of the UAE. But what's really impressive is how agile the UAE are in terms of listening to stakeholders and flexing immigration policy. So there are quite a lot of businesses that are, very interested in supporting individuals to come here. And, they have questions, say, for example, can people go and work in their offices if they actually have an employer who has an office in the UAE, even if they're employed outside the UAE. And all these things are being looked at. So it's a very fluid state. And whilst the announcement on Sunday was just a widening across the Emirates, I think there will be more announcements in the next few weeks. The other thing is the visitor visa announcements. These were to say that for all nationalities from the next few weeks, they will be allowed to self-sponsor themselves for visit visas. Okay. So currently, some nationalities have to get visas. Others can get visas on arrival or no visas at all. But in the future, all nationalities can self-sponsor. They won't need sponsors to visit. And they can get a period of 90 days, which can be extended for a further 90 days. That will take you up to 6 months. And this is a really generous improvement. And it's especially going to help people who are working here, say from India or Pakistan or the Philippines, and they want their relatives to come and visit them. And it can be quite expensive if the visas have to be sponsored. So this is also a really, really good improvement and really helps mobility.
Okay, well, that's fascinating stuff, Julia, and loads of comments coming in, which is absolutely great. So people are saying, what we got here?
Yeah, I think Lena says good. It's good that great news that you don't need a sponsor. So absolutely. That's good.
Yeah, so that's great. So Julia, we're going to say ta-ra till next week. And we're going to bring on Pat to talk to us about what's going on in the wonderful world of tax.
Thank you.
Pat, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself, Brian?
I'm good. I'm guessing you're still on the East Coast. You've not moved?
Oh yeah. No, still in the greater Boston. Stuck at home, working from home.
Okay, so what are you going to talk to us about today, Pat?
We have just a little bit of time to give you a recap on some tax developments since I last was on the show 2 weeks ago. And if you recall, we talked about the American Rescue Plan that was just about to be signed into law, passed into law, and that has now been enacted. And the other thing that happened just last Wednesday on St. Patrick's Day, the IRS announced an automatic extension.
Your birthday, Pat. It was your birthday.
That's right. It was on my birthday. Not like it was much of a birthday gift for me.
How amazing. They named a saint after you.
I think it was the other way. Anyway. So they heard everyone complaining about how this tax season is complicated. So they've decided to give individual taxpayers 1 extra month. Unfortunately, not like a year ago when we got 3 extra months. And so that actually puts the new deadline at May 17th, not the 15th, because that's on the weekend. And so that is when, May 17th is when interest and penalties will start to accrue and when tax returns are due. Keep in mind that these are only individual tax returns that get the extra month. So corporate, estates, trusts, all the other things that would normally be due still apply. And the same is true for any estimated payments that individuals would need to make for the current year, 2021. First quarter payments are due still on April 15th. So unfortunately, no extension on when those are due. So the other thing that's happened here since 2 weeks ago, we now understand why they only wanted to give 1 month. The extended deadline has now put at risk how quickly the IRS can implement this fancy new system for administering advanced child tax credits. You may remember that this year you get an extra, the expanded credit is $3,000 per qualifying child, maybe even up to $3,600 if the child is under a certain age. And half of it is supposed to be a monthly cash payment starting in July. So 6 months from July till December, and the IRS needs time to actually set up that system. So they're saying that they may not have the resources to build that new website and get those monthly payments in place by July. And it's just a clear indication that the funding for the IRS is not up to snuff, and they probably need more congressional budget funding in that respect.
We've got a question coming in from you from Andrea Kagan. What about the tax return deadlines for state taxes?
Oh, well, yes. As a matter of fact, that is one of the things I wanted to share. So, this tax system here in the United States is not just the federal tax system. We have 50 states. 41 of those impose an income tax on wages. And we have heard from many of them already. So 35 states are now going to grant the automatic extension to at least May 17th, maybe even more. So that could be 2 months out, 3 months out. So we'll see this probably as it gets closer to April 15th as to whether they will grant additional extensions. And we just put out a post on our AirShare blog post yesterday, and has an updated listing as of yesterday as to which states are granting that extra month or more. So that is what's going on with that. So we also talked about stimulus checks. The rescue plan was signed by President Biden on, I think, the 11th of March. And within a week, where they started sending out these stimulus checks. This is the $1,400 per qualifying individual, and it does get phased out for higher incomes. So they did the first pass, which is all direct deposits. This is where they actually had information on individuals' bank accounts from the returns that they have. And now they're working on the second round of stimulus checks. These will be issued as paper checks or as debit cards. So this will be, physical mail that you get in the regular mail. And so watch your mailbox and make sure you don't think this is junk mail. This is, these are checks. This is deposit or debit cards. These could be overlooked. So that's something to keep in mind. They've already processed 100 million payments, and it is the equivalent of over $250 billion of cash going into the system within the last few weeks. So
I just love the fact they're sending out checks. I mean, you'd have thought they should be able to do wire transfers by now.
Well, right. And to the extent that they haven't, they've already done that. But, there are a number of individuals that don't have the bank account information on the return. So they have to actually issue a check from the U.S. Treasury. So that is what's going on. And I think the last thing on the states, I already mentioned the extended deadlines on states. We're still trying to figure out whether states will acknowledge and recognize that special exclusion on unemployment. We talked about that 2 weeks ago as well. Only for 2020, the first 10,200 of unemployment income now is not taxable. And we don't know yet whether states will follow along with that. So that is something that we're trying to keep tabs on as well. So that's my updates.
As ever, thank you so much, sir. I'm hearing a bit of feedback, actually, which is not good. Anyway, we're going to move on, and we're going to bring our special guests online now. Okay, everybody, welcome Andrew, welcome Yuki, and audience. Let's see the love out there. Let's see the hearts. Let's see the applause. Let's see the little like buttons. Tell us. We're going to start off. I'm going to ask the audience a question, and I know you guys know the answer, but I'm going to ask the audience a question. Okay, Andrew and Yuki have got something in common. Okay, now we know we could say they're global mobility professionals. That's easy. But I'm talking about something in common from their childhood, okay, from before they started work. And let's see if anybody can guess, and you can put them in there, and we'll put the funny ones up on screen and we'll put the serious ones up on screen. But see if you can guess what Andrew, because Andrew, you were born in Norwalk, weren't you?
Massachusetts, outside of Boston, but close.
Okay. Close, and then you went to Norwalk. I've got this thing about Norwalk. I think there's a local law somewhere that says that if you went to school in Norwalk, you have to go into the global mobility profession. I'm there, but Yuki, you were born in Tokyo, weren't you?
No, I was actually born in Hiroshima. It's in Japan, but grew up in Tokyo.
Okay. So I've got neither of those right. I got them both wrong, but I was close. Okay, they both played lacrosse. I don't think that's the answer. Although I don't know. They were both teenagers once. We're all teenagers still. Okay, so keep guessing, folks, and that will be our fun fact. So that's our fun fact. What do Andrew Walker and Yuki have in common? Kathy says they both went to the same college. Nope. Nice try. They were both children expats from Henry. No. Shall I give them a clue? Why don't I give them a clue? Let's just see. There's a clue we can get here. If I find it, here we go. Here's our clue. Okay, that'll get people thinking. And the answer isn't they weren't both in Sister Act. So we'll find out. See whether anybody gets it. So anyway, let's just talk about how you both got into the industry. I mean, it's just great to have you there. Yuki, let's start with you. Go Yuki, says Lisa. Okay, so let's do exactly that. Let's go with Yuki. They both like to dress as nuns. Oh, Henry's got it. He's got it. They both like to dress as nuns. Yeah, aha! I think a prize goes to Drew Phillips. They both went to private Catholic schools. Is this right? Were you both educated by nuns?
No,
We can report. Sorry?
not exactly, but I did go to Catholic school
Okay.
and lived with a nun.
And Andrew?
I did not go to Catholic school, but I lived with nuns. I lived in a convent.
Okay, so there we have it. Our connection, which we didn't know before we did all our green room stuff, is Yuki and Andrew both lived with nuns. And there's a thought for the day. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Let's talk about your career path. So, Yuki, you went to school in Tokyo. So how did you end up in the US, and how did you end up in global mobility? What was your path into the industry?
I came to the United States for college education, and I did not major in global mobility. I majored in international business first, but I did end up with an accounting degree. And when I graduated, naturally, I went to a public accounting firm. And one tax season, when I was doing corporate tax, I had an exposure to expat tax returns, and that was the hook. I found it really interesting, so I decided to go into global mobility tax preparation. Then from there, several careers later, I ended up in HR and in mobility management.
Okay, I mean, there are a huge number of people who are global mobility professionals who've started off crunching expat tax returns in one of the big accounting firms, or indeed one of the boutique accounting firms. So, I mean, that's a very tried and tested path in. And Andrew, but you got into mobility a completely different way, didn't you? I mean, what was in your blood because you were being educated in Norwalk?
Yeah. Well,
it's the law.
So I had an international bug. When I lived in the convent, I was a student abroad, and I went to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, and they have a campus in Rome, and the school is based in a convent. So that's how we can tie that together. But also, it gave me the international bug, and I knew I wanted some kind of international career. But before I could get a career, I needed some experience. And in my hometown of Norwalk, there was a large office park that happened to have several relocation companies in it. And I knocked on every single door in the office park. The only company hiring summer interns was Merrill Lynch Relocation, which became Prudential and then BGRS. So I worked as an intern in college as a clerk for a relocation management company. And that was in 1987.
Okay. So I'm just looking at the other comments that came up here. They both met the Pope. They were both child actors. So it's always nice to know what people are thinking. They had nothing in common. Oh my dear. Oh, that person's anonymous. Thank God for that. So okay, so you came into it from different ways. So you came into Andrew basically by working with Prudential, and then you went into you started off on the supplier side and you moved to the corporate side. So you're both obviously on the corporate side now. Which side do you prefer?
Yuki, you want to take that first?
Okay. They were pluses and minuses in both. I did enjoy the service provider side. You get to work with so many different clients, and I had a large team through busy seasons, so I do miss those, but I do prefer industry job. You get to do so many different things because the breadth of work or skill sets that's required to manage mobility, you really have to be broad in the industry, where in professional services, I think you go deep, but it's a little bit narrower.
Yeah. And I suppose in industry, you're ultimately responsible for what's happening, whereas as a service provider, at the end of the day, you're a consultant to a company. I know you get into a lot of trouble if something doesn't get right, but they're not, it's not people actually in your own company in the same way banging on your door. Andrew, do you miss being a consultant, or because obviously you could do both?
Yes, and I've gone back and forth. I had a brief stint later in my career as a client-facing consultant, and I really enjoyed parts of that by leveraging my expertise in lots of different ways. But I also found that being an external advisor, there was always a degree of suspicion. What was my motive for giving a specific piece of advice? And I realized if I were doing that as an insider, nobody would be questioning my motives. They would understand I'm doing it in the best interest of the organization. And for all the reasons Yuki said, I think I do prefer, and I've spent much more of my career on the client side. I like being the owner operator of a program, having that some degree of independence, and you can also bring a degree of sort of an entrepreneurial bent. So how do you find better ways of working and redefine the way your team works, which I think is a lot easier to do on the inside as opposed to the provider side.
Okay, what I want to do now is get into the meat of our discussion, this question about bi-coastal. What I would say is everybody out there in the audience, please ask questions. I can ask some questions, and obviously, I've got questions I want to ask, but your questions are best. Okay, so if you've got questions for Yuki and for Andrew, then just put them in the LinkedIn box, and we'll make sure we put them on screen, and we'll make sure we get to them. They have promised they will do their best to answer all the questions that you have. So go for it, guys. Let's ask Andrew and Yuki the interesting questions, the challenging questions. Okay, but I'll kick off. It's my show. Why shouldn't I? Okay, and the theme of the show is we're going bi-coastal, and here we've got East meets West. We've got Andrew sitting there in a very blue chip accounting firm on the East Coast, and Yuki sitting there in San Francisco, heart of tech, almost polar opposite. You think of the East Coast as being fairly sort of straight-laced, and the West Coast being much more laid back. And I know these are all stereotypes, but are you seeing differences? You've both got people on the other side of the coast, haven't you? EY have got offices all over, and Yuki, you've got offices on the East Coast as well. Are you seeing differences in culture, or in fact, I'll put that another way, what are the differences in culture that you're seeing between your East Coast teams and your West Coast teams? Andrew, do you want to go for that one first?
Okay, sure, I'll take it first. So I will say, I think the EY culture, and most organizations, I would imagine, is similar, is going to trump the nuanced geographic cultures within a country. So I would say that the way we do things at EY is far more consistent because of that. My observations about organizations that tend to be based on the West Coast is really from my own perspective, and I may have it totally wrong. So I apologize in advance if I say something that some of you completely disagree with, but I would say that the West Coast organizations have tended to be more innovative and less rule-based, more sort of experience-based than my experience working with East Coast companies, which are sort of, we have an established way of doing things, and you have to kind of stick to the program. That being said, I think it's definitely changing quickly. And that is a vast generalization, I know. But if I had to sort of point to something, that's what I would say. Yuki, would you agree at all with that?
I do agree in general, and I think that there's a notion that West Coast is somewhat more relaxed. And I don't know, Silicon Valley is not necessarily relaxed. So up and down the coast, even in California itself, Northern California versus Southern California, there's a cultural difference. But at least for Gap, we tend to have people that are more creative side in marketing designs. Those were primarily based in New York, but we have a headquarters. We started our headquarters in San Francisco, so all the major decisions are made and all the executives sits here. But when we move people from back and forth, there is a bit of cultural shock, even just between among the teams. I don't have any teams in New York, but the way our business partners work in San Francisco office versus New York office is a little bit different. And I do agree with Andrew. East Coast tends to be a little bit more formal, a little bit more hierarchical in some of the decisions or communications are made. Where West Coast, our San Francisco based office is little less. But then again, that is that differs by the group of people. So the top level people, I don't think it matters West Coast versus East Coast.
Okay, we're getting some questions coming in, so we'll take some of these. Here's one from Gusharan. He says, question for both of you. Do you think cultural awareness should impact how mobility programs and policies are designed? Maybe Andrew, do you want to take that one
Sure,
first?
I should say the cultural awareness should be part of, that should be a factor in how you design it. You should recognize that there are cultural differences in your policies, should flex to sort of acknowledge that and account for it. Another angle on that might be, should you subject all of your assignees either to cultural awareness development, or should they even take some type of assessment to determine if they are culturally intelligent? You talk about emotional intelligence. Do they have the cultural intelligence to be successful? And I think there's probably a place for all of that. It really just depends on the organization in which you're operating. But as a general rule, yeah, I think we all need to take on board that sort of awareness of different cultures impacting the way we operate.
Is that something you do? You offer cultural awareness training?
We do very little, I have to confess. We do very little formal cultural awareness training. We do provide online cultural awareness training to everyone. So we do facilitate it, but we don't historically, and the other points I was making, we haven't historically provided an assessment. And there's this tool, I think it's still called the Overseas Assignment Inventory, that provides sort of a profile of the individual against norms. And I think that's really helpful, not necessarily as a selection or deselection tool, but as a developmental tool. I'd like to see more organizations doing that, including EY.
Okay, and Yuki, I mean, you've got a very different demographic of your moves. I mean, do you provide cultural training for people before they make moves?
We do provide cultural training for all international moves. We don't do it for domestic. And we have a cultural training tool that is available for non-relocating employees. We had those years ago, but the whole company is moving to a different learning platform. So we had to take that off the table, but it is in the works to have some type of cultural awareness training made available for all Gap Inc. employees. And with the recent incidents, there has been a tremendous, it's not just country cultural, but a larger scale or more broad cultural awareness training is made available now.
Okay, and actually here's another question that's coming in that I think is an interesting one, is what's an example of something you consider innovative or cool that your program has recently started to do, something your employees love? I don't know, Yuki, if you want to go for that one first, or if you need time to think, Andrew, if you could.
No, that's okay. We don't have we have a very small program, less than 50 expats. So we don't have anything that can be rolled out, especially in a pandemic. But We do cater to everyone's needs based on the circumstances. So I can't say we don't have any innovative or cool programs that we recently launched, but maybe Andrew can share some.
So would you say, just before we get on to Andrew, would you say that because, I mean, we had Marissa Johnson on a couple of weeks ago, and she made the point that because her program was much smaller, she was much more flexible, and there was far less by way of policies and more by way of guidelines. Would you say that's the same with you at the Gap?
In some ways, yes. We do have to be much more flexible than a larger structured program, because we need people to say yes, they want to move. We don't have a lot of people raising their hands in wanting to go, because we basically move people that are in a management positions or functional leaders, and they're not the and we don't have a lot of population that are in the earlier career stage. They just want to move with a couple of suitcases.
Yeah, because I'm guessing this is one of the big differences between your programs, that people by and large, correct me if I'm wrong, but people by and large don't join the Gap because they want to do international travel, whereas people by and large, I'm guessing, do join EY because they want to have international travel as part of their career. So going back to that question, and I'll turn that on to you, Andrew, what is an example of something that you consider, really innovative or cool that your program has recently started to do? And I know we were talking about something to do with that just the other day.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to be very proud of at EY, and I'll just list them, but I'll talk about the third one. So one, we don't have a policy. We operate something called the Modular Mobility Framework that
Modular Mobility Framework.
Yes,
okay.
Modular Mobility Framework.
Okay, that's cool.
It's a mouthful, but it allows for packages to be designed to recognize the varying needs between the individual assignee, the business, the budget, the reasons for the assignment, but also do it in a very consistent way. So it's not just this free-for-all negotiation. If you're moving a like for like, it should logically point you to a very comparable package so that we can be consistent, but we're not necessarily bound by policies that we invariably have to make exceptions to. The other thing we're doing is creating a very proactive, structured way of managing the assignee's experience and their development opportunities. So we give prompts to the assignee and to the leaders that are involved to ensure that the opportunities that the assignee has to develop themselves throughout their assignment are in fact happening and preparing them for the exit. The third thing that we're, and that's just been rolled out to everyone. The third thing that we're developing now, it's not rolled out, but it's really cool, is providing a lot more access to mobility experiences for the people who want them. We know that over 80% of the joiners that come to EY cite the opportunity for international experiences as being one of the major draws. We're 80%. Yeah, wow. They want to have some type of cross-border experience. We are a 320,000 employee firm. We are not going to be mobilizing 80%. But we do mobilize proportionately, probably not much different than other organizations, but in raw numbers, a very large number, but not nearly enough to meet the demand. So the mobility team is developing a solution called USwap, which basically is like matching, and it provides the ability for assignees to find a counterparty in another part of the world who's doing a broadly similar job, and together they can present or pitch to their bosses a swap. And it's a very low cost way of moving, but it also addresses a massive challenge that our business has, which is we don't want to give somebody up because that's keeping our business working. We don't want to lose that resource. We're saying, don't worry about it, you're going to get a resource back in.
And how do they find each other? Is it like sort of Tinder?
Well, yeah, that's where we're sort of joking. It's a swipe right,
swipe
left. But that's the biggest challenge is working through it, and the team is working really hard on the technology to support that, and we'll probably do some sort of minimum viable product to start with aspirations of making it slicker. But yeah, it's something that everybody's really excited about in the organization.
I bet that sounds so cool. So the idea will be that anybody can go online and find someone who might want to swap with them, and presumably that's got to be somebody at the same level with the same
Yes,
skills.
That's part of the matching.
And then presumably one of the problems you have though is that the managers of this junior talent might be quite reluctant to lose their best talent because they're working on a particular job, or just because they like them. And why would they give up on their best talent when they're going to be getting at best an uncertain one in return? So have ways of overcoming that.
I think we'll have to see how that works out. But the initial reaction is actual excitement, because leaders aren't looking to inhibit the experiences of their people, but they also have to sort of do business. They have to do work. And so if this allows them to accomplish both, we know that there's a lot of support and demand from the business for this product. So,
okay, we're getting another question coming in, which I'll take. In fact, we're getting so many questions. I'll try and take as many as I can. So much from my pre-prepared questions. I might throw them out. I'll just take the ones from the audience and keep them coming, audience. We'll try and deal with as many as we can. So Liana says, I hope I pronounced your name right. Liana says, would you say your mobility programs are still in COVID response, mitigating issues for those overseas, recovery, shifting back to getting people to move, or thrive mode, reincorporating new business objectives into moving talent? So to try and summarize that, I think she's giving us 3 alternatives. Would you say your mobility programs are A, doing mitigation, B, recovery, or C, in thrive mode?
Yuki-san, want to go first?
Is there an option D? So my
we get to amend the questions as we want. You can go for as many other options as you want.
Okay, so I would say we would be between A and B. We're not in a thrive mode. We are starting to move people because we had people that were on hold, but we're still dealing with moving people because of the trailing COVID. It's evolving, but with the multiple surge, countries are having, they're not all lifted. Their entry bans are still there. The entry restrictions still change every day or every week. So that's part of our daily routines now, just really keeping up as, okay, which country is still open, and how many days or how many hours do we have for pre-boarding COVID test? Because every country is different. Now it's somewhere between, it used to be 72 hours, now it's 48 hours.
So if, from a gap point of view, we'll come on to EY in a moment. If 2019, you moved 100 people just to keep a baseline, what did that drop to in 2020? And what do you think it's going to be in 21?
It will pick up compared to 2019, it'll probably be about the same or could be more. Because of the 2020, we would likely be looking at more restructuring that usually leads to moving people.
So you got some pent-up demand in your system. Mm-hmm. So you're expecting...
Yeah.
So that's good news for everybody in 21. And that's what I'm hearing from others, is that so we're expecting 21 to be at least as good as before this whole mess started, so back to 2019 levels and maybe even more than that. And then it'll be interesting to see where that settles down in 2022 and beyond. And Andrew, what about you? First of all, let's address the question to you. Where would you say, in terms of Liana's 3 choices, where would you say you're sitting at the moment?
I have to say, it's going to sound schizophrenic, but I think we're in all 3. There's
Schrodinger's mobility or something.
Yeah.
It can be in all 3 places at the same time.
Yes. No, I think depending on where the challenges lie. So we're still grappling with COVID. We're still having sessions with the team just to get updates on sort of what the trends are, where can we move people. We do have some mobility happening, but we're pivoting and starting to plan and ramp up for more activity. At the same time, we're really having a profound rethink about how we support what is mobility. First of all, defining that differently. It's about cross-border experiences, perhaps without ever even leaving your chair. And how do we enable that as a function? But also how we operate and how can we be more efficient and provide a more consistent level of service. So we're looking to sort of come out of this in a very different place. And I've sort of been wrestling with where to interject this, so I'll pause now and just say, for the record, I technically left the mobility function at EY last week.
You can't leave us. You can't leave us.
Yeah, so you're having a non-mobility guy after 30 some odd years in mobility. For the first time in my career, I'm not responsible for some aspect of mobility in my organization, and I was managing mobility and total rewards for a few years, and now I'm focusing everything on total rewards. So
Stop. Everybody start hitting the applause button. Okay. So Andrew, you've got a new job. You've been promoted. You're total rewards leader at EY. Okay. This is amazing news. Many congratulations. But we are going to miss you. Well, I presume you're staying on board because obviously you've got your ERC role. So
that's one thing that makes it sort of a little bit easier for me to process is my ongoing role with Worldwide ERC on the board. So, which I'll do that for.
This is in your DNA.
Yeah, I know it's strange. It's strange, and it took me a while to get my head around it, but we're there now. So, I was going to say, I know I've also noticed some questions coming through about the swaps program. And I want to give a plug to Anya Valdik, who's sort of the person on the mobility team that was her brainchild. So, Brian, maybe you should have her on your show and she could talk.
We'll do. She's actually been on the show before, but we'll get her back.
Oh, that's right. She was on a panel. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That was we did a Big Four panel a while ago.
Yeah, that's right.
But we'll definitely get her back. And also, so who's taking over the lead at EY?
The new global leader is Penny Angove. She is awesome. One of the best mobility professionals I've ever worked with in my long career. And so I have complete confidence in her ability to actually do even better than I tried to do in the role. I think the team's in great hands. So she's another guest you should bring on. But she's in Australia, so this time of day is a little rough for her.
Absolutely. I'm not sure we'll get her on the show. Well, we'll try and get on the show, but I think it might be a bit challenging this time of day for her. One thing I should say, actually, and my colleague Nitson has reminded me in the comments box, but one thing I should say is that we've actually done a benchmarking report. Our strategy council member, Michelle Durkin, led us with the help of Wes Okamura. So again, that was East versus West, or East and West working together. We've done a benchmarking report on domestic relocations in the US. If anybody's interested in that, then just go onto the Beneva website. You can download it for free, and it's all talking about what's going on in domestic relocations at the moment in the US. But just getting back to you, Yuki, and let's just see what other questions we've got. We've got coming in. Hang on. I'll just take one. Here we've got question that I'll take for you, Yuki. What factors do you add into your policy as regards duty of care? And I'm going to actually add one extra bit to that. Is with COVID, I'm guessing everybody's got an even bigger duty of care than we had, or it's more top of mind than it was beforehand. What factors are you putting into duty of care in your policy?
We actually did not make any changes to the policy. We did factor in more security and wellness factor into a care for the when we consider moving people, and this is especially for external hires that are moving not on assignment but on one-way moves. Around health insurance, make sure they have. We we stress that they they have insurance coverage while they are moving until they get on our payroll and be eligible for health benefits. The other things are really educating people on how to take care of themselves. We did have, and this is a little bit off the topic, but we did have a virtual assignment. It's just that we didn't create it. It's just the nature of it. They were slated to go. They could not go because of the entry ban. And that ended up being a virtual assignment. And it was very hard. We were moving people from New York to Asia. So 17 hours difference. They were working from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. or like past midnight. So it's around wellness was a big concern and factor that we normally don't deal with, that we had to deal with.
I think you've raised an interesting question, and there's been a lot of stuff in the press recently about, and I won't name names, about certain employers working their employees too hard and putting in, and limiting the number of hours that, anybody can do, because there's risk of mental health crises and suicides and all sorts of problems when people, certainly some of the, the investment banks spring to mind in particular as having a bad reputation there. That's where there has been comments in some of the press. But it's harder now, of course, with remote working, and I think we should be talking a bit about remote working, is that people can be working and you don't know. It's not like they're working in the office the same way. And yes, they might be, and that was always the fear of employers, they might be skiving when they're working from home, but actually it might be the opposite. They might be working so many hours that, their first work call in the morning is at 6 a.m. in the morning, and their last work call at night is at, 10 o'clock in the evening, especially in our industry where we're dealing with multiple work time zones. And so you find that, somebody wants to meet with you and they're in Asia, and therefore it's early, and then somebody in, the West Coast of America wants to meet with you and it's late, and it's, in Europe. But I mean, Andrew, from your point of view, because you've now got your new hat on the total reward side, what are you looking at in terms of managing duty of care, especially when you've got people working remotely?
Sure. Yeah. Well, one of the threads of total reward is well-being, and this is the absolute hottest topic within EY right now, and I would venture to guess most organizations. And we saw that a lot of people wanted more flexibility in their roles, but the old way of working prevented that, and leaders thought, I can't let my people work from home. I need to have them close to me and make sure the work's getting done. But COVID forced a whole dynamic change, and now we see it's possible. So everybody thought, this is wonderful, we can work from home, but it's very hard to achieve work-life harmony when you're plugged in all day long. And that fear that, oh, my people might be, goofing off is proven to be completely unfounded with the productivity gains that most organizations have seen during this time. But the long-term impact of that is just burnout at every level of the organization. It's unsustainable, and our people need help to sort of set those boundaries. And so we're looking within EY in multiple levels. How do we address that? How do we encourage people's physical well-being? Getting exercise is a great tension reliever. Mental health, are there resources, counseling, just little things like carving out time in your day where you unplug. And so we're trying to attack this from multiple angles, but it is the absolute top priority right now in the organization.
Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left, but I just want to sort of just come on with a couple of quick fire questions, I suppose. Working from home, is that going to be a permanent feature of your organization, or are you expecting everybody back in the office? Quick answers now, we've only got a couple of minutes. Yuki, what do you think is going to happen? Working from home, the gap?
Depending on the role, it'll be permanent.
Okay, and Andrew?
Hybrid. We know people enjoy the flexibility of working from home, but very few people want to do it exclusively. And so we're expecting, we did a survey recently, and I just heard this morning, 60% of our people expect to be working from home 50% of the time going forward, with full support of leadership. So that's the new model.
So do you think you'll be reconfiguring offices?
Yeah, I think, and this is unrelated to EY. I read a little blurb in the news this morning that plans to slash office space are sort of being reevaluated, and plans to divest have been abandoned. But a lot of spaces are being reconfigured to be collaboration, not just go sit at a desk all day, but go use this day to have all your meetings and interactions with other people, which makes it a lot more interesting, I think.
And I think, Yuki, you were saying to me when we were chatting earlier that the gap, you can't get everybody back to the office and configure it safely, and so people will have to work from home.
Yeah, some people will be. And just to clarify, I have to say, when I say permanent, is we all have designated office space or a cube. More than likely, we will lose all designated space, and that spaces will be turned into mobile collaboration space. But no one's going back to the office just as is when we left last March. That's for sure. So
exactly. So the world has changed. Okay, and the last, I'm going to let this run on because there's just so much to talk about. I'm going to let this run on for a couple of minutes. Last question, and I suppose, especially Andrew, given your sort of new role on total rewards, what do we think this is going to do to compensation for people who are working from home? Do you think we're going to end up with a situation where if you choose to, say, work from, I don't know, say Florida, and you've moved there from, say, New York or San Francisco, that your pay will be adjusted? Or do you think you'll stay on effectively home pay?
I think it depends, like everything. I think it depends on the industry, it depends on the geographies and the size of the organization. So I don't imagine that EY will go to a global pay scale. It just really doesn't make sense for us. That being said, when I've made that statement in other forums, there have been people who've been horrified, saying, I work in a tech firm and we couldn't possibly adjust people's pay downward. In fact, we're going to set a global pay level, so no matter where you work, you'll get the same thing. And that probably works for that organization, because right now tech is so hot and it's so hard to find people, and you have to pay them what you have to pay them. So you will see probably both. You'll see sort of people who are enjoying a very high level of income in a low cost setting, but I would imagine that's not going to be the norm. Just my prediction.
Because you started your career, or you went at some point your career, Andrew, and you're in Des Moines, Iowa, which I'm guessing is a lower cost of living than New York or San Francisco. So
in fact, it was earlier career, and I was making not a lot of money, but I was making okay money, and I told the hiring manager in Iowa how much I was getting, and she's like, okay, we can work with that. So I presumed when the offer would come through, it was for more money, and they actually offered me less money. And I thought, this is crazy, but it was such an exciting opportunity. I took it and ended up in a couple of years earning back and more. But it required a lot of reflection and consideration, for sure.
Okay, well, it's been a fantastic show, and we've covered so much. There's so much more that we could still cover. Let me bring Julia and Pat back onto screen. So the team is all back. All that remains is for me to thank oh my gosh, I nearly forgot. For those of you who want credits, these are the credits. I'll leave that up for the last couple of minutes. Anybody who wants their ERC credits, their SHRM credits, their HRC credits, they're running out there on the ticker at the bottom of the screen. Yuki, Andrew, it's been an absolute pleasure having you both on the show. We've really enjoyed it. Fascinating conversation, and two very different programs. What I'm hearing actually is a lot more similarity than difference. And I think you both made the point. I think that culture is driven in many cases more by the employer than by the geography, which I think is a fascinating comment. Julia, as ever, many thanks for your immigration updates. Are you back next week, or are you going to be another week in the Maldives?
No, I'll be back in the UK next week.
Okay, quarantining from home then, presumably.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Pat, you, I know, will be in the same place. You've not gone anywhere, so you'll be. Where is
no
it?
plans to go anywhere. No.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to come and visit you, but I'm afraid that's not going to be for a while. Okay, everybody, many thanks for a great show. It's been great having you on board, and thank you to all our audience for your questions and for your comments. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Thank you.